Well, I first of all want to apologize for my stuffy head. Between the allergies and cold, it's made an effect. Yesterday, I didn't even think I would be here, but the Lord intervened, whether you like that or not. We are in a new series that Lanny introduced for us last week called Lego Church. And truthfully, the understanding of how Legos fit together, snap together, hold together, and make a design is about as good a clear picture of what the church is supposed to be. Over in Ephesians chapter 4 and verse 16, he talks about that very thing. I mean, you could write Lego in the margin and it would be pretty appropriate. He says, from whom the whole body, being fitted and held together by that which every joint supplies. Snap, snap, snap. According to the proper working of each individual part, causes the growth of the body for building up itself in love. There's about 40 passages in the New Testament that deal with one another. And the one that's mentioned the most times in the New Testament is love one another. And that's where we begin today. We begin with this understanding of love. I heard the story of a young lady who was stalled beside the road, and she was waving at cars going by to somebody to stop. And finally, a couple gentlemen stopped, and she said, I've run out of gas. Could you just shove my car down to the gas station? And they got behind the car, and with a lot of effort, they went a couple of blocks and came up to a gas station, and she went right on by. And they said, what are you doing? Why are you going by the gas station? She says, well, I never go to that station. They don't have full service. Be a little tough to love that lady, wouldn't it? Maybe disgust might be the first word that comes to your mind. But when you think about love one another, you have to go to the passage that Jesus spoke in John chapter 13. Verses 34 and 35, because it explains it explicitly about what this is all about. He says, a new commandment I give you, that you love one another, even as I have loved you, that you also love one another. By this, all men will know that you're my disciples if you have love one for another. That's a big if, isn't it? If we are his disciples, if we love one another. Now, we have corrupted the word love in the English language. And the Greeks, they did a much better job of separating the different kinds of love, because I love coconut cream pie and I love my wife. Now, how do those two fit together? I love my hobby of antique tractors, and I also love Jesus. Now, how do those fit together? You see, we don't do a good job of separating enjoyment with this love that God has commanded us to have. There's two main words, and you've heard this many times, but we'll rehearse it again. Two main words in the New Testament that describe love. The first one is the Greek word phileo, or brotherly love. Good friends, people that enjoy one another, brotherly love. And then there's the agape love. And agape is the kind of love that God had for us in John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, only begotten Son. That's the kind of love that we're talking about today in this message, to love one another with a love like God had for us, to send what we needed. And if you understand this agape love, it is meeting needs that you see in others? That's what we're going to determine as we go through this. Now, there's 2 or 3 passages that I want to take your attention to. In 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 and verse 9, he describes the phileo love. He says, "For you recall, brethren," I'm reading the wrong chapter 4 and verse 9. "Now as to the love of the brethren," there's that phileo love, "you have no need for anyone to write to you, for you yourselves are taught by God to love one another." Then if you go over to 2 Peter chapter 1 and verse 7, he's going to describe the God kind of love, the kind of love that gives, the kind of love that is committed to doing the right thing. Verse 7, "In your godliness, brotherly kindness, and in your brotherly kindness, agape love." Now, there is a passage that holds both of those words. It was just kind of interesting to find that passage in 1 Peter chapter 1 and verse 22. Both phileo and agape appear in the same verse. So here it is. "Since you have, in obedience to the truth, purified your souls for a sincere love of the brethren," phileo, "fervently love," agape, "one another from the heart." And so God joined the two together. And really, I almost see it as a progression. We progress from the brotherly kind of love to the godly kind of love. And that's what he's calling on all of us to have. If you've got your bulletin, the outline in there is very good. Understanding God's kind of love. Understanding this agape love. Now, in the book of 1 John, there's 43 references to love. All of them are agape that I have found. And he describes what God's kind of love looks like. And so let's look at some passages that are going to show this from 1 John. In chapter 3 and verse 11, he says it of this: "This is the message which you have heard from the beginning, that we should love one another." The beginning of Christianity was all about Christians loving one another. If you go back to the book of Acts, when the church was started, you read through the pages of Acts and you see how the church responded to one another's needs. The church was constantly reaching out and helping one another. And it was out of love that they did that. Look in verse 23. "And this is the commandment, that we believe in the name of his Son, Jesus Christ, and love one another just as he commanded us." Now, I want to explain something. When he commands us to love, it becomes a choice. It's not a mushy-gushy feeling. It's not something that all of a sudden I just really kind of fall in love with. It is a choice I make. I decide I'm going to love like God loved me. I'm going to make a commitment to choose to love one another and to let my life help meet those needs. In verse 14, he adds a thought to it. "And we know that we have passed out of death and into life because we love the brethren. He who does not love abides in death." He's saying that when we love one another, it's the proof that you're God's child. What does it prove when we don't? Pretty understandable, isn't it? That because we love, we're showing God's kind of love. It's a result of God loving us. Look in chapter 4 now, verse 11 and 12. "Beloved, if God so loved us, we ought to love one another. No one has beheld God at any time. If we love one another, God abides in us, and his love is perfected in us. The reason why we love is because God loved us first. He loved me enough to send his only son to die in my miserable place. And that's the kind of love he wants us to have for one another, a committed choice that I make to make a difference in other people's lives because God made a difference in me. That's understanding God's kind of love. But secondly, I want you to look at the importance. Why is it so important to have God's kind of love? Well, in Matthew 22, there were some disciples that came to Jesus and said, "What's the greatest commandment?" They argued all the time, the Jews did, over which commandment was the greatest commandment. And they were going to put Jesus on the spot. Jesus didn't have any trouble answering it. Love the Lord your God with all of your heart, mind, and soul. Then he added this. And the second's like it, love your neighbor as yourself. The greatest commandment is to love one another. Nothing greater, nothing more important, nothing has a greater priority in your life than loving one another. And then in the verse 40 following that, he says, on these two commandments hang all the law and prophets. Everything I said in the Old Testament is a result of love. Now, I'm going to take you back to the Ten Commandments. The first four of the Ten Commandments, you can check it out, Exodus chapter 20. The first four are love God. The last six are love one another. And so Jesus, when he said the first is to love God, the second is to love one another, all of the Old Testament law hangs on this. It is the importance of God's love. It is the fulfillment of the law. And it's also the fact that without love, whatever I do is nothing. You know 1 Corinthians 13 pretty well, but let me read it to you again because it has a profound statement to make. If I speak with the tongues of men and angels, but do not have love, I've become a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have the gift of prophecy and know all mysteries and all knowledge and have all faith as to remove mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. And if I give all my possessions to feed the poor, and if I deliver my body to be burned, but do not have love, it profits me nothing. And you know what nothing is? Nothing is a circle with a line erased. That's what nothing is. And that's what God says we look like when we do not operate in love. If we're just going through the motions, it's just, I got to do this. If it does not come out of love for one another, it's a nothing, a big zero. The importance of God's love. And in Romans chapter 13 and verse 8, he calls it a debt that I owe. I've got a debt that I need to pay. And God's laid that debt on every one of his children. This is a debt you must pay. Listen to what he says, verse 8. Owe nothing to anyone except to love one another. For he who loves his neighbor has fulfilled the law. A debt. Look at it this way, would you? Jesus paid my debt. Jesus paid your debt. And now he's given us a debt to pay back. Oh, we don't have to die on a cross. We don't have to be beat with a cat of nine tails. We don't have to be mocked and spit on and slapped. We have a debt that says we love one another. And we act like God when we do that. The third thing that we catch here is the growth of God's kind of love. It's a growing thing, and I'm glad about this because I haven't arrived yet. Have you? We're still all in the process of learning how to love. It's a daily opportunity to see new things that I need to love and respond to and act like God towards my neighbors. And it's going to be that way until the end of our lives. Over in 1 Thessalonians again in chapter 3 and verse 12, he describes it this way: and may the Lord cause you to increase and abound in love for one another, for all men, just as we also do for you. You know who he was saying that to? He was saying that to people who were being persecuted, people who were being hated, people who were being mocked and ostracized and left out. He says, love them, just like I loved you. Because we were the enemies of God at one time, and he loved us. And there are people in your life right now that it's difficult to think about loving them, and yet God says that's exactly what we need to do. You've heard me talk about the Voice of the Martyrs many times. We just got a new magazine, and reading through that, I am absolutely overwhelmed by the people who have been beaten and thrown in prison and starved to death, and they come out and they forgive their captors. They forgive them. And I wonder, could I do that? And yet Jesus said in Matthew chapter 5, verse 44, love your enemies. You see, when you do, you're acting like God. You're doing the same thing he did when he loved us while we were yet sinners. Christ died for us. And we are to increase and abound. That word abound there is a word that should have been translated super abound. Over the top, running over. That's the kind of love that he wants us to show. And in chapter 4, he adds another thought to it in verses 9 and 10. Now, as to the love of the brethren, you have no need for anyone to write to you, for you yourselves are taught by God to love one another. For indeed, you do practice it towards all the brethren who are in all Macedonia. But we urge you, brethren, to excel still more. What do you excel in? Well, we like to excel in making money. We like to excel in athletics. We like to excel in anything hobby that we take on. We like to. Do you excel in loving one another, even your enemies? Is that something that we're excelling in? That's what we're to be driven to. That is this growth thing. And it's going to be something that we choose to grow in. I'm choosing to love these people. In 2 Thessalonians chapter 1 and verse 3, he adds another admonition. We ought always to give thanks to God for you, brethren, as is only fitting, because your faith is greatly enlarged, and love of each one of you toward one another grows even greater. This love, this agape love, this choice of committing ourselves to one another and meeting needs, is something that needs to grow even stronger. Over in 2 Peter chapter 1 and verses 5 and following, he has a whole list of qualities that a Christian ought to possess. You know what the last one was? You can guess it. It's love. He says, if these qualities are yours and are increasing, they render you neither useless nor unfit for the kingdom of God. Love is the quality of growing more and more, continually learning to love one another. But the question remains, how do we show it? How do we love like God did? Well, thankfully, he gives us the answer to that. It starts in Galatians 5 when he talks about the fruit of the Spirit. You know, when you became a Christian, two things God gave you. Besides forgiveness of sin, when the Holy Spirit came in, he brought two gifts. The gift of service of some kind, of ability to meet the needs in other people's lives, and that's going to come out of love. But the second thing he gave was the fruit of the Spirit. You know what the fruit of the Spirit is? It's the character of Christ. That's how Christ was represented, with love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. That's just how Christ acted toward everybody. And we have those qualities in us, the first one being love. But it has to grow. It can't remain what it was the day you became a Christian. It needs to continually be on the grow and getting better and increasing. But he also explains that this kind of love, this commitment kind of love, this choosing kind of love, is going to meet needs in people's lives. 1 John chapter 3, we're back in 1 John again, here it comes, verses 17 and 18. But whoever has the world's goods and beholds his brother in need and closes his heart against him, how does the love of God abide in him? Little children, let us not love with word or with tongue, but in deed and truth. He says God's kind of love meet needs. God's kind of love sees needs and figures out how to meet them. Now, let me say something. All the needs that God wants us to meet don't have dollar signs on them. Some of them are being a friend, coming alongside of somebody and just helping them in a time of grief or a time of difficulty that their life is going through. Sometimes it's just saying an encouraging word, lifting somebody up. Sometimes it's coming alongside and just being there as a friend, sitting on a front porch and just gabbing. That's meeting needs. And sometimes it's reaching in your pocket and saying, here's somebody that's in my venue of friendships, whatever, that has a special need, and I want to help with it. I want to make a difference. That's God's kind of love. In Hebrews chapter 10 and verse 24, he talks about that encouraging aspect of it. He says, let us consider how to stimulate one another to love and good deeds. Now, one of our one another sermons is going to be how to encourage one another, and I look forward to being able to share that in particular. But today, I just want you to know it comes out of love. How to stimulate one another to love and good deeds. Just a simple question you answer in your own mind. Who have you spoken a word of encouragement to this last week? Did you miss an opportunity to encourage your spouse or your kids, your parents, the boss, the employees? Did we miss a chance to just say good words? There in the little pockets in the chairs you're sitting in, there's some yellow cards. Sometimes we need to replenish those, I guess, but the little yellow cards are just an opportunity to write an encouraging note and give it to somebody. And you can write that note and hand it to them, or you can put it in the box out there at the Welcome Center and we'll deliver it for you. You don't even have to sign your name to it. But the understanding is this is God's kind of love. This is how you act out God's love. Stimulating, encouraging one another to do good and godly things. We couldn't talk about what love acts like without going to 1 Corinthians 13 again. Boy, does he describe it. You want to know what love looks like? You want to know how you act it out? It's all right there. Verse 4. Love is patient. Did he have to say that? Are we being patient with one another or short and curt? Love is kind, not jealous, does not brag or is not arrogant, does not act unbecomingly, does not seek its own, is not provoked, does not take into account a wrong suffered. Speaking of forgiveness. Does not rejoice in unrighteousness, but rejoices with the truth. Bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never fails. Never fails. To act in love will never fail. What an amazing understanding that God has given us and how we love one another. Could I tell you this? In the weeks to come, and we've got several weeks, we'll probably take next week off for Mother's Day, but in the weeks to come, we're going to address many of these one another's. And loving one another is what promotes every one of the other one another's. You can't do the others without this one. This is where it all starts. Learning, choosing, growing in loving one another. I heard the story of a retired man who decided he wanted to use his retirement for good, and so he started visiting nursing homes and hospitals, and he would take his portable piano along with him, and he would tell jokes and sing songs and just have a fun time with the patients there. And on one such occasion, he finished what he was doing, and he just hollered out to all the people that had gathered there, "I hope you all get better." And there was an older gentleman sitting out there that had listened to him, and he says, "And I hope you get better too." Do you think God might be saying that to you this morning? I hope you get better at loving one another. I need you to love one another. I need the world to know who my disciples are by loving one another. Let's pray.